The current stigma in my community from an African American standpoint denotes an educated African American as a sort of sublevel of white. I constantly get judged on the way I speak, how I dress, and how I act, surprising people with an unanticipated sophistication.
Ms. Gotts, a sorority member of Alpha Gamma Delta, argues her sorority members on why an overqualified African American girl was rejected admittance to their sorority. The recruit, who asked to remain anonymous, seemed like the perfect pledge on paper, yet didn't receive a single bid from any of the 16 Pan-Hellenic sororities during formal recruitment. Gotts and the others knew why. The recruit was Black. To this day, racial barriers exist and limit the capabilities of many ethnicities because of standing stereotypes.
Being Black tends to come with the connotation of being uneducated with thug-like characteristics, which seem to always be an initial read on my character.
But you're white, right? Is usually a common response I get when explaining my heritage. Well, yes, my ancestors came from Europe, but my family is Peruvian and I was raised 10 years in Puerto Rico. I've only lived stateside for 4.5 years. Oh, I would have never guessed it. You don't look Latina, and you also speak English like so well. Is usually the turn those conversations take. Anyone else notice the amount of wrong and just plain insulting remarks in those couple sentences?
Well, firstly, your race does not determine your heritage, and secondly, not all Latinos look the same.
Thank you. We all come from a lot of different countries with different historical makeup. We don't all fulfill this stereotypical brown-eyed, tan, and voluptuous look. We don't also fulfill this awful stereotype that we don't speak English, and that when we do, it's completely incomprehensible. How would that even be considered a compliment?
How are any of these comments even okay?
Simple. No one is talking about how they aren't.
What we define ourselves as, or self-identify as, plays a huge role in how others treat us and how we live our everyday lives. This is the same theme which our research started. We started with questions on how our identities, more specifically the subdivision of race and ethnicity, played a role in our social interactions.
We wanted to take a look at self-segregation, where you associate and spend more time with people who you consider similar or the same as you, especially based on racial and ethnic identities. Research shows that most, if not all, minorities come together based on whom they identify themselves with. There's a sense of comfort that comes with socializing with someone of one's own color.
The book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in a Cafeteria by Beverly Tatum proves with concrete psychological proof that children in lower, middle, and high school tend to self-segregate and group according to race. Self-segregation comes from all aspects, and we can see it clearly in high school. The typical cliques are a form of self-segregation. This book sparked the initial idea for the talk today.
As we split up to do our research, our project began to evolve. We began to look into different aspects of modern-day race relations. Some of us took on white privilege, and others took on racism towards the African American community. We delved into interactions between minorities and how minorities are forever shaping melting pot America. We even looked into how admissions process is using race and ethnicity. Our study of self-identity and self-segregation had evolved into the much larger topic of self-identity in modern-day race relations.
Due to our divided manner, clear communication on our different issues was hard to achieve, and we were just 5 people split up by 3 different periods in a school day. Now imagine this on a larger scale, like on a national scale. See, as much as we want to pretend that race relations and communication between different races and ethnicities is just the greatest, it isn't. Don't get me wrong, communication on issues revolving around identity is, compared to the past, great, but there's still a lot more room for improvement.
Today's discussion on race relations are very black and white, with the occasional other minority sprinkled in. This two-sided communication is obviously not helping anyone, and if anything, it's increasing tensions and hate between minorities. By not talking about the different issues all races and ethnicities are faced with in the US, we create even more oppression and continue to inflict even more damage. There's an obvious need to revolutionize how we solve these issues, and it all begins with you and me. As overdone as that sounds. The past couple of months have opened our eyes to how large the discussion on identity really is, and how the subdivision of race and ethnicity is just as large. We also discovered the social taboos surrounding the discussion on these issues.
Worried parents and even classmates discouraged our discussion and suggested we do something less provocative and controversial. No need to get people worked up on something we all already know. Faced with such opposition motivated us to keep going and keep pushing. This topic is just this giant elephant in the room. Everyone is just skirting around it. Everyone knows about race and ethnicity-related issues. We even talked about it for 2 full school days.
Yet, when MTV decided to dedicate a whole day to broadcasting about these issues and opened up a forum for people to openly speak about contemporary race relations, it was received with controversy and questions. Is this really necessary? What's the point of it all? It's this taboo and avoidance of conflict that needs to be changed. Having a conversation or simply acknowledging the problems and successes that we see in America shouldn't have to end in conflict.
The creation of an open dialogue can immensely improve all race relations in our society. We can begin with the acknowledgement that we need to change and end with acceptance all around. Wouldn't that be nice? I know it's not easy, but it all starts with a single focus. Focus on yourself. Focus on your own mind and your own thoughts. Better yourself and change the way you see the world. We have to learn that in order to make a change, we need to convince ourselves of our thoughts. Communications over the past couple of years, especially in the last couple of months, is getting our generation closer to that end goal.
Accepting others is an individual decision. One person's decision to accept someone else regardless of their gender, their race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or simply their personality is how we can cause a great change in the world. One choice, one decision, your decision, gets this nation and many others around the world one step closer to that end goal. Not a world full of tolerance for differences, but a world full of acceptance for differences.
If you put yourself out there and you make the effort to treat people with respect from no matter their race or background, not only will you better yourself, but you will better the world in general.
From our study, we can see that different races and ethnicities have different views on pressing issues, and we cannot force them all to have one point of view. But we can educate ourselves on struggles that other people face and respect each other. We will never, ever be colorblind as a society, and that's a good thing.
We will keep our identities as different races, but instead of ostracizing people for their race, we have to learn to respect cultures other than our own. If we all treat everyone with respect, the world will be a better place, and each discussion gets us closer to that ideal world.
Thank you.